15 years ago, a man named Matthew Vale stopped smiling. He was a farmer living alone on a small farm outside Wheatland, Oregon, with nothing but wheat fields, a red barn, and silence. 10 years before that, a tractor accident had left a scar running from his left cheek down to his collarbone, and after it happened, the whole town changed how they looked at him. Children stared and hid behind their mothers. Women turned their faces away. Men looked at him with pity, like they were grateful it hadn't happened to them. So Matthew stayed on the land where the earth doesn't judge a man's face and crops don't care if you're handsome or broken. He liked that kind of fairness. Then one October afternoon, a girl appeared on his porch. Her name was Elena Morris, and she was trembling. She told him her father said he needed a wife. Matthew didn't laugh, because the second he heard those words, he understood everything. Elena had just lost her job, lost her home, lost everything. She was about to lose herself too. But before you hear what happened next, please subscribe, because this story will completely change how you think about second chances and broken things. Matthew's hand went to his scar without thinking as he listened to her speak. He told her the truth. His father, Albert Morris, had once saved this farm when the bank wanted to foreclose. Albert had told the bank that Matthew wasn't a failure, just someone who needed more time. That old man had been the only person in town who still saw Matthew as a human being instead of a scar. Before Albert died, he came to the farm one last time. He was already weak from heart trouble, but he wouldn't let Matthew come to his house instead. He sat under the old maple tree and told Matthew something he never forgot. He said, "Elena is just like her mother. Proud enough to starve before she'll take charity. When I'm gone, if she's in trouble, she won't ask anyone for help. But you know what it's like to lose everything and have to start over. Look after the girl, even if she won't let you." Matthew told Elena all of this while she stood crying on his porch. Then he made her an offer. They would get married, civil ceremony, nothing dramatic. She would have the legal right to stay, a safe place, her own room, her own life. In return, she would help with the house and the garden and selling at the market. She asked what he got out of it. He gave her a small, tired smile and said, "Maybe a house that doesn't feel so quiet." Those words made her eyes fill with tears. She said yes. Monday morning they went to the courthouse with 2 witnesses. Sebastian Cole came because Elena's father had once fixed his mower for free. Rosa came because she was Elena's friend and she needed to be sure this wasn't a mistake. The ceremony took less than 10 minutes. No music, no flowers, no guests except the 2 witnesses. He kissed her for no more than a second, barely a touch at all. But when he straightened up, he saw her eyes had gone wide and dark, like she was surprised as he was. Their first days together found a rhythm. Elena woke early and cooked breakfast. Matthew watched her work in the garden with a focus that made him realize how much she needed to feel useful. He found more and more reasons to walk past where she was working. He asked if she needed water even when the bucket was already full. He asked if the tomatoes were ripe even when they were still green. She always looked at him like she knew exactly what he was doing. 2 weeks after the wedding, they went to the farmer's market together. That's when Caroline Whitmore appeared. She was a woman in her 50s wearing expensive clothes that didn't belong there. She looked Elena up and down like she was inspecting something cheap and said, "The new bride, you look right at home selling vegetables. Even if your father tried to make you look like a lady, you always end up back where you belong." Matthew kept his voice cold. "Morning, Mrs. Whitmore. You here to buy something? We're just wasting our time." Caroline turned to him with a poisonous smile and raised her voice so the neighboring stalls could hear. "How's married life? Have you realized your mistake yet? The whole town knows she only married you to escape being homeless." But Elena stepped closer to Matthew and took his hand in front of everyone. Her voice was clear. "My marriage to Matthew is our business, not yours. And if you care so much about our lives, maybe you should ask yourself why your own life is so empty that you have to fill it with cruel rumors." The market went quiet. Then Caroline hissed, "You're nothing but a penniless orphan. I can destroy you with one word." Elena's grip tightened, but she didn't back down.
You already tried. You accused me of stealing. You took my job. You tried to put me on the street. But I'm still standing here because the truth is stronger than your lies."
Matthew was in the barn when he heard the chicken coop door slam open.
Elena had already seen the chickens running panicked in the downpour.
She came running through the rain trying to catch the terrified birds near the big oak tree.
Matthew ran after her.
At that exact second he heard a loud sickening crack. A thick branch of the old oak had split and was falling straight toward where she stood.
Matthew's blood turned to ice.
He lunged forward and threw his whole body into hers. They hit the ground hard as the branch crashed down exactly where she had been standing.
He was almost shouting, voice raw with fear. "Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea what just happened? You could have died over a couple of chickens." Elena was still clutching the bird against her chest, breathing fast. "I just didn't want them to die."
Matthew grabbed her shoulders, his hands shaking.
"Chickens can be replaced. You can't."
She looked at him. He knew she heard what he hadn't said out loud, that the thought of losing her had terrified him more than anything in years. Matthew kissed her. It wasn't like the careful kiss at the courthouse. This one was desperate and rough and full of everything he had been holding back for weeks.
Elena kissed him back at once.
Her free hand came up and tangled in his wet hair, pulling him closer. They ran for the house and Matthew slammed the door just as another gust tried to rip it off the hinges. Elena stood in the middle of the living room soaked to the skin. Matthew grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders.
"But when I thought I was about to lose you, I understood. I've fallen in love with my wife."
Tears mixed with rain on her face. She answered, voice breaking.
"I love you too.
I think I started loving you the day you gave me a roof without asking for anything in return." Matthew reached up and brushed the tears from her cheek with his thumb. The next morning they went to see Father Thomas and a local lawyer.
Rosa's cousin worked in the county records office.
3 days later she drove out to the farm with her face flushed.
"I found it," she said.
Caroline bought a piece of land from old Mr. Ethan Ruiz when he was already losing his mind.
Caroline shot to her feet, voice cracking with rage. "This is all because of Albert Morris.
He humiliated me 30 years ago."
Father Thomas stood up slowly. "Albert is gone, Caroline.
The person who destroyed your life is you for holding on to that hatred all these years."
Caroline looked around the room. No one supported her anymore.
She walked out in heavy silence.
People began to clap. That night the town held a small gathering in the square. Elena and Matthew danced under strings of lights.
Matthew leaned down and spoke into her ear.
"Do you remember the night you stood on my porch and said your father told me I needed a wife?" Elena smiled.
"And you said he was right?" Matthew shook his head.
"I was wrong. I didn't need a wife, I needed you. Exactly you. My partner, my love, my home." Elena's eyes filled with happy tears. 6 months later, the farm looked completely different.
Elena's garden had become the most popular stall at the market. They paid off the loan on time and fixed the barn roof. One spring afternoon, Elena stood in the middle of the tomato rows with her hand resting lightly on her stomach. Matthew walked over from the field and saw the look on her face.
"Elena?"
She took his hand and placed it where hers had been.
"We're going to have a baby."
Matthew stood completely still. Then he lifted her off the ground and spun her in the middle of the garden while she laughed and cried at the same time.
"I love you," he said, voice breaking. "I love both of you. I love this family." Elena smiled through her tears. "My father was even more right than he knew.
You didn't just need a wife, you needed a family."
That evening they sat under the old maple tree.
Matthew had built a new wooden bench there and carved their initials into the back, M and E intertwined.
Elena rested her head on his shoulder.
She spoke softly into the wind.
"Thank you, Dad. You were right.
Matthew looked out at the sun setting behind the wheat field, his arm around his wife and his hand resting over the place where their first child was growing. He had once believed his life would only ever be soil, seasons, old scars, and silent rooms. But Elena had stood on his porch with a trembling voice and one simple sentence, and from that sentence he had been given everything. A family. A home. Love that didn't judge his scars but saw through them to the man underneath. This is a story about broken things becoming whole. This is a story about how one person's belief in you can change your entire life. If this story moved you, please subscribe for more stories about second chances, real love, and the power of seeing people for who they truly are.